Okay, listen, before I forget, I wanted to let you know about this session thing I've been doing lately, and it's been really, really cool for a lot of small businesses, entrepreneurs, even medium-sized businesses. And what it is I'm doing free discovery calls to just check the temperature. Let's see how you're doing with social media. Have you started a campaign? Are you sporadic? Any questions that you have about social media, I would love to help answer them. Now, all you need to do is go into the detail area below the description and check out the Calendly link I put in for you. All you need to do is go ahead and click that, book some time for us, and we can continue this conversation. Hey everyone. You know how like in the beginning of podcasts or sometimes there's people that say, oh, I'm really excited about this next guest. This is probably one of the most exciting guests I've ever had, and I'm going to tell you why. So a while ago, I was watching Shelby Barlow on TikTok, and I see her as a Gen Zer. I think as she said, she's kind of on the cusp between a millennial and Gen Z. But what has been really exciting for me on TikTok is to see Gen Z really take action, speak their truth in ways that have never been done before, especially in business. There's so much that we can learn from Gen Z in terms of how they see, what they see and how they see business going forward. We need to adapt quickly because we're seeing this huge exodus happening in the job market where people are just not tolerating toxic environments. And Shelby has been very nice enough to actually talk to us about toxic environment from her perspective in tech, and particularly with the company Pinterest, which was really surprising, but then not really, because we've all sort of known that toxicity is running rampant. No one's actually dealing with, especially racism on a corporate level, on a corporate scale. What do we do? How do we, within management, how do we protect people that are working within the company and also making sure that they're not being harmed? And again, this is kind of this like multi-themes here. But what I liked about Shelby in particular, my biggest takeaway from her interview was that she used the phrase harmful racism, harmful racist types of actions that were put upon her. And I went, wow, that is such a very astute way of encapsulating what racism is. Racism also really attacks your nervous system. So you don't have a real turnaround time if you are having racism affect you and, that bully mentality. She actually refers it as a mob type mentality. You don't have any downtime because you have to go to work the next day. So your nervous system is constantly being attacked. Your body is fearing harm. And because racism does equal harm. And so this is a very candid look of what this looked like, how it was not dealt with from her perspective. And I love listening to her unfold what was really a common workplace sort of trauma. So I'm really excited to get her on. Also, too, I want to get her back on again just to have her perspective on how to move the needle with small businesses and social media. She's so bright. She's so brilliant. I'm so excited. I will stop here and introduce you now to Shelby Barlow. Hey, everybody. I'm really excited today because I have Shelby Barlow. And let me just tell you really quickly how I found her. I was watching TikTok and she was on my For You page and she was talking about her experiences, just from a tech perspective and how she had some really toxic experiences within that environment. And she was just calling it out. So yeah, there's this huge, I think honestly, there is a resurgence. And I think that Shelby, you really brought it to the forefront for me about that self-advocacy piece and really talking about, hey, you know what, we need to live and work in a different way. So Shelby, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I was really excited when you reached out. I haven't done many podcasts before, so I'm super excited for the opportunity and I really appreciate the chance to be here.
That's awesome. Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself, your journey, how you just I always actually want to be able to bring in more people that are from the social media space because I think we all get bombarded from of what we see as an influencer. Uh, uh, but saying that, there is also a surge, and I think TikTok is showing more that meaningful um, uh, type of, I guess, the new version of what an influencer is, which there's a relevancy, there's that social awakening. And that's why I just like immediately fell in love with you. And I'm trying to limit the people that I follow because they're just like it. But when I
Yeah.
saw you, Shelby, I was like, oh my God, she's just so great because you're just calling it out, saying what was happening in real time. And then I so resonated with you because I've had plenty of toxic relationships with work. So tell me a little bit about your journey, how what prompted you to actually share your story on TikTok?
Yeah, totally. So, like you said, my name's Shelby Barlow. Hello, everyone. I'm 25 years old. I'm based in Miami. I work full time in tech. I work at a small data startup currently. And then I'm also a part time content creator. And I totally agree with your point about TikTok kind of showing you the new side of the influencer. I actually don't even think of myself as an influencer. I think of myself as a content creator because it is that, what I share is very personal. It's my opinions, it's stories about my life and things that I've experienced and how I feel about them, and less so my actual lifestyle, like the things that I buy or the things that I use my time for. It's a lot more just like, this thing happened to me and this is how I feel about it. So in terms of what inspired me to share my story, so whenever I started having the trouble that I was having at Pinterest, I knew that there was a chance that even going through all the right avenues or mediums of support might not result in the best outcome. And I'm like kind of talking around it, but what I mean is I knew that going to HR might not necessarily do anything. And so I was thinking about it, like kind of weighing the pros and cons and just thinking like, well, what am I going to do if it doesn't work out, if they don't do the right thing? And I told myself, well, if I had known what this was before I encountered it, I could have handled it better. There are things I would have done differently, and I would have been a better advocate for myself had I known what was even happening. And so I told myself, if I'm not able to solve this with Pinterest amicably, then I will leave Pinterest and I will tell the world what happened here. Not only because it's my own personal way of dealing with things. I am a content creator. Like I get a lot of pleasure from just um, sharing my stories and having people react to them and being able to engage with a lot of people. I'm very extroverted. I'm a Leo. I love it. So there is that aspect of it, but then there's also the aspect of, I know that from all my research, it's difficult to find a solution in situations like this in the workplace because there are not a lot of laws for it. And especially if you're a member of a marginalized community, there are just not nearly as many support mechanisms. You may not have people in your family who can talk you through this. That's the case for me. Like I don't come from a family of people who worked in the corporate world before. So I really was kind of on my own navigating it. And so I decided like I will use my platform to just raise awareness about this issue and give people some type of vocabulary to use if they are experiencing this, or be able to at least have some kind of dialogue around it, because we're pretty limited in terms of the companies or the government helping us. It's like very unlikely for that to be the outcome. So I just wanted to try to help in as small of a way as I can. Because, obviously not everyone in the world saw what I posted, but it was just kind of my way of like, making peace with the situation. And then also hopefully saving someone else from encountering the same thing.
Yeah, I think what you said was really important, especially from your background. Women of color generally, that's what kind of why I started what I was doing here. I don't think that there's a lot of voices out there just sharing that. And also too, what I found was brilliant with you in particular is that you put language to it. And sometimes as we're going through it, and I've had a very similar experience in the beauty industry, because I've worked with MAC Cosmetics. Early days, I was a makeup artist, and then I went into skincare, a really nice skincare company in West Hollywood, and still had some of that pushback, this really strange pushback because of who I was ethnically. And what I felt was great about your TikToks is not only were you giving, the words, the description, the feelings around what you were going through, but also it made other people say, oh, I'm not crazy. This is something that's happening to more than one of us. It was great.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. That was something that had a really profound impact on me from a lot of different angles. There was, obviously there's some comfort and kind of commiserating about this thing that we've been through and realizing it is a shared experience, because it's very isolating. It makes you feel very alone. It makes you feel ostracized. It makes you feel like a weirdo, like a freak. So for me to not only realize how many other people have been through it, but for everyone else to read the comments and even see me talk about it so openly and directly and very confidently defending myself as well. If you watched a lot of the series, you saw me say point blank, this happened to me because my manager was intimidated, because my manager was threatened. And I approached it that way purposely because to this point we're coming back to, especially being a woman of color in the workplace, it's very taboo for us to do that. And I chose to do that anyway, because I recognize that it does give other women, especially women of color, permission to do the same. And so I totally agree with you. That was something that really, and I said from multiple different angles. So there was not only the empowering aspect of it and kind of the community building part of it, where I did kind of feel like, I'm in this shared space with a lot of other people, women especially, who have been through this. But then there's also the side of it that's like, wow, this is really sad. It's so sad that literally thousands of people are commenting like, this happened to me. Oh, I didn't even realize this is what it was. Oh, wow, I'm so glad I have the word for this now. Oh, this happened to me 20 years ago and followed me across industries. It's been a problem for a really, really long time.
It has been, and I will say this. I think that a lot of the time when I talk to, so over here in New Zealand, we almost classify people's roles in different categories. So there are a junior category, an intermediate, and then a senior role. And a lot of the times when I get junior roles, when I work client side, and I've done all of that bit, the cool thing is I like grab on to somebody that's like your age and go, okay, I'm going to tell you, like, let's just demystify everything. I will let you know you're sitting here because you're really intelligent. I can learn a lot from you. But there is going to be a series of people that are my age or older, especially in the social media world, where they're not going to give you a lot of credit. They're going to push back because the big elephant in the room is, you know more than them. You understand how all of these mechanics work. You understand algorithms. You understand different platforms. So now you just made that senior person obsolete. So they're going to really fight you on everything and really put you down in front of people, because again, that power struggle is going to happen. And it's the dumbest thing in the world, because if you knew that you had somebody under you, and I say under, I refer to everybody I worked with as a colleague, because that's the truth. Uh, what we can learn from other people will actually accelerate our, whatever we want to do, wherever we're going, we can actually excel from starting point to the finish line in a quicker way if we're in a more of a collaborative space. So that was already like, wow, what a huge missed opportunity to not work with somebody like you. And you were seeing the beginnings of, as soon as you started, you were sharing like, oh, this is what we're doing. This is kind of the cool PR kits that we're sending out. And so we're starting to see the process, and they could have benefited from that because they never really shared that before as a company. So we were warming up to Pinterest as another platform. And then what happened?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. And not, I hadn't necessarily thought about it from that
Yeah.
perspective, but that's true because I did share about like when working there and I was always very honest. And I actually remember because I got some questions about what it was like to work there. And even from the beginning, I noticed there were things about it that I didn't love. And I kind of had a sense of, okay, this isn't the internal culture that I was expecting based on the product and just what I was sold during the interviews.
Right.
And so when people were asking me about it, I posted a series of videos that were honest, but also kind of a bit filtered. Like I didn't come out full 100% because, I was new there. I was still getting acclimated. My TikTok was like growing a lot at that point, and I was just very conscious of the number of eyes that were on it, and what I was saying and the way things can be misconstrued. And I remember at the time when I posted those videos, because I wasn't like, oh, it's amazing, it's fantastic, it's great. I felt kind of self-conscious, but in retrospect, I'm glad that I was authentic. Like I said, it was filtered because I was being like,
Sure.
I was still an employee at that point in time. And so being mindful of my full-time career. But that said, in retrospect, I was really glad that I never sold a different version of what it was because, when I did come out and say like, oh, actually the culture is very toxic and I was harmed and abused as an employee of this organization, you can look back at my older stuff and see kind of some of the stuff I'm talking about where it's like, oh yeah, there is a lot of cool gifts and there are cool things happening, but the people who actually work there, they have some qualities about them. So
And that it's just, even if a company or somebody were to see this happening, I would have went like, wow, this is still because I feel, especially in the US, there is such a movement of like, after COVID, we're actually not going to be working this way anymore. And people are taking steps to vocalize that and to actually put action behind it and leaving jobs. So what can we learn as a company? If I was an exec at Pinterest, I'm like, all right, this is great. Let's actually use this to break that toxicity happening. Let's we all know now and I didn't know this when I was your age and I was having a lot of issues and problems. Actually, I think I worked 10 years in Mac and I started at 25. And HR wasn't my friend. In fact, they were gathering information to get me out. At the time, I'm a big girl, but I was bigger then, even more so. And I didn't fit the culture in Los Angeles, being the Mac makeup artist. They were collecting information from me, whatever it was that they saw that they can tag as a problem. And so they weren't actually helping me. But what we also need to do is we need to change and shift HR, just that whole department into more of a, we need to have that employee advocacy first. And then there's a chain where there's HR where we need to look at it. If things are just not changing or improving, how can we graciously and amicably leave each other? And that's the process. It's got to be more like we're changed. Okay, this is the cool thing about your generation. They're changing. If we're moving along with them, doesn't matter. I'm a Gen Xer, doesn't matter. Your generation is changing the scope and of. So we can either tap into this brilliance or we can resist and say, no, this is the way things are. You're coming in the office, you're doing this certain way. I was watching Bethany Frankel, her show that was like The Big Shot, where she was talking about her company and all of this idiotic, stupid stuff. And she was saying in particular, and she was cussing. She was just like, F word. And so what this other contestant was doing to match her energy so she could be people like us, she was also mirroring the same energy and using curse words and doing it. And she was, I just would never do that. I would never do that at work. I would never, ever cuss. Like, what are you talking about? Why is she wearing that? And I'm like, you know what? And this is problematic with her company. She's never, ever had a consistent team, a consistent management team or anything, because she always thinks that she could do it better herself. All right. So And that's going to crash and burn, because that's what happens with all these companies that think that they're going to have this big, huge idea of how we should work. And they're not going to bend and fold into what is modern vision, body first mentality, business is second. If we all did that, we would be so brilliant. I actually do that in my company. And what I've seen happen is that we have somebody that's just, again, someone around your age. She's a young mother, and she will work 2 or 3 hours, break off because the sun is out, and she wants to take her daughter to the beach. That is brilliant, because her work has been exceptional, because she's in a creative field. So she needs time, space, and everything. She just needs one due date. Everything's due on Thursday. You do you. And that's what we need to sort of move to. So I think, if anything, this is something that Pinterest, or I don't know if they have the vision to actually look at this and go, we need to change. But what's going to happen to our generation, and Gen X, I don't know if boomers are ever going to get it. But I say that lovingly, but I also say this because you're younger than a millennial. Millennials and baby boomers really bug me, but your generation I love, because there's not a lot of change. There's a lot of blaming. There's a lot of, from one side, and then the other side is like, well, it's always worked for us. So those rigid thinking, we're not going to be progressive. Whereas your generation has forcefully been progressive and said, actually, I don't care what the noise is, we're going to do us. And that's where the change is. And what I loved about you and your story and everything is that actually would be great as a series on LinkedIn, because people need to know. We need to know to go forward. Everybody's talking about innovation and all of this other stuff, but no one's doing anything. Like if I see another, and forgive me, but if I see another white male TED talk about how teams are supposed to work, I'm going to vomit, because it's not like that. It's not like that. It's about, leaving at 3 o'clock to pick up your kids if you have to, without the eye roll, or somebody saying, I need to have a mental day because I need to, I can't right now. This client's driving me crazy. And I'm telling you, if I sit one more day in this office about it, I'm going to go crazy. So I need to take a mental day. Yeah, it should be like that. It should be. So in your trajectory of where you want to go, tell me about your future and what is not negotiable for you and what is negotiable for you.
Ooh, such a good question. What's not negotiable for me? I think something that is not negotiable for me is a culture of accountability wherever I'm working. I realize that, previous to Pinterest, I had only ever worked at organizations that had great cultures, and I took it for granted. Due to just my youthful inexperience and then being the first person in my family to work in an environment like this, I did not know that environments like Pinterest could exist. I didn't know that it was possible for something like that to happen in a workplace. In my head, there are going to be rules in place. There are going to be people who enforce those rules. And Pinterest it was such a wake-up call for me about the world that we live in, and just kind of really disillusioning. I feel like it matured me a lot in a good way, but coming back to that point of feeling disillusioned, I definitely am a lot less starry-eyed since working there. So one of my non-negotiables for sure is a culture of accountability. And when I was interviewing for the role I have now, I even asked them, how do you hold people accountable when they're not meeting expectations in terms of how we treat people and how we interact with each other? Because I do feel like a lot of companies, when they think of their norms and their norms for collaborating and interactions, they're so focused on the work, they don't necessarily recognize that there's a ton of interpersonal stuff going on at work. The typical American worker especially spends more time with their coworkers than they do with their friends or their family. And so we're also at a point in time when we need to start having more conversations about the fact work is a lot of our lives, and it's not as simple, especially in the day and age of working from home, to leave it at home. It's not as simple to just close your laptop and log off when it always feels like it's with you. It doesn't ever feel like it goes away. So I think another non-negotiable for me is a company that's having kind of modern and realistic conversations about life in the workplace, and just how much time we're all with each other and what that means in terms of how we act and our expectations. I think that's really important to me, and something else I really love about the new role that I'm in, because we're a really small company that's pretty new. It was founded in 2018. So the culture is just it's very malleable. It's very, like, I don't want to use the word young, but more just flexible, I guess, and more just kind of like, it's staffed primarily by people who have grown up wanting to have more flexibility in terms of work from home, and just kind of like, less focus on when you're working and more focus on just, is your work done? Cool. So that's something, that kind of mentality towards work is also non-negotiable for me. I know some industries, it'll tell your manager if you haven't typed in like 20 minutes or something like that. I will never work like that. I will not willing to compromise on that at all. I think in terms of things I'm willing to compromise on, and this is something that I've done for my new company. So my new company, I'm their first Black woman hire so far. Like I said, it's like a fairly new company, pretty small. I was employee like number 70. And something I really appreciate about it is one of the men I had an interview with just kind of brought it up point blank and had a very honest conversation with me about it. Like, we are a pretty small company. It was, founded by 2 white dudes. And so as a result, we're not the most diverse company at the moment. It's something that we're working toward, but that is a reality. Like, what is your comfort level going to be with that? And just the fact that he was willing to be so frank with me about it made me open to it. It made me intrigued. I'm like, if you all were just kind of not acknowledging this, and I'm just like looking at the website and seeing a sea of white folks and like not much else, you weren't willing to have an open conversation with me about it, I would see it as a red flag. But because they were able to acknowledge, like, this is a bit of an issue. We were kind of short-sighted when we were staffing, not really looking around and noticing, which I'm like, that's pretty typical of white dudes. So I don't really fault them for that. And like, that's kind of normal. You're like really put heads down on the product,
Yeah.
So that I think is something I am willing to be more flexible on. Like, if a company is not necessarily already diverse, if there are some green flags waving in my face that they recognize that it's an issue and it's something that they're trying to correct, then I'm open to being kind of one of the trailblazers who comes in there and helps with that. So, it definitely comes with it. It's like, I've never felt like more Black than I do now working at this company. And not because no one does anything intentionally, anything. It's just like, we'll have meetings and there's like headbanging music, and it's like, it's just so, just stuff like that, where it's like, it's not even like they're trying to be exclusive in any way. It's just like the culture that they're used to, because up until very recently, it was just primarily white dudes.
Yeah.
And so I would point to that, because I do think we, D&I is like such a hot topic these days for good reason. But I also, I wanted to point that out as something I'm willing to compromise on, because I do believe, like, if none of us are willing to kind of be one of the first ones, these spaces that are not welcoming to us and not diverse never will be. So, and I've had a really good experience there. Like, everyone has been so welcoming. Probably helps that, I burned Pinterest to the ground on TikTok. Like, I'm sure some of my coworkers saw my series and were like, okay, I'm not going to cross her. But I also think I just like am working with really genuinely good people now. And it's a great feeling.
That's amazing. And one other piece too, because when you said that you burned Pinterest to the ground, you know what? I feel like you also took yourself back. Like, you were just taking yourself back. And one of the things with traumatic sort of episodes, when you have this type of work environment, is like, oh, maybe some of the stuff they said was true, or I'm going to self-doubt myself, even though there was a reason why I was there, and there was a reason why I was doing so well on my own, aside from this nonsense that was happening. But this can really, for some, and I've known some people that it stifled them. They didn't know where to start or how to go. So I don't even know if we have, as a society, if we ever have the foresight to actually make these into law. Aside from in New Zealand, they talk a lot about bullying, and it's a good payout, actually, if you can demonstrate that you're being bullied. The average sort of case is paying out at $30,000 New Zealand, and it's been going up. exponentially because judges are just getting really tired of seeing these type of cases come. So the dollar amount is going up anywhere from 40 to 50 and I think that's the thing, right? It's like if you have uh, a a new person come into your company and you've had 30 days of nonsense with them, they're like, yeah, I'll just cash in. Here's my evidence. And you just paid for my whole year. Like, I think the more of that needs to happen. Um, Definitely. So when you think about everything that you've gone through and, having that futuristic concept and that right ethos, and there's so many different ones. I mean, there's so many themes you went through in within Pinterest. And one that really touched me a lot was I'm of mixed heritage and really never sold myself as mixed heritage. I've always felt Mexican American. Um, but my own culture has classified me as not Mexican enough. Um, uh, so I've had betrayal within my own culture saying, I'm going to sabotage her every chance I can get because I feel this is my perspective and I still see it within the culture. I feel that Francesca thinks that she's better than. So therefore, I'm going to do everything I can to knock her out and just show that she's actually not that at all. And we even have a term in our culture called no sabes kids, which means they don't know us, they don't know the culture, they don't know what it means to be Mexican, which is really insulting. And you've had a bit of that as well from your experience. I think that's worth mentioning and talking about. I talked a little bit earlier about, what our voices can do. I don't think we hear a lot of that. And that was one of the things I was really excited about you is that like, she's calling it out because it's not okay.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is one thing that I do think kind of sets me apart in terms of being a biracial creator is that I'm willing to take it there. Like I don't do it often, but when it comes up, I will take it there and I will be honest that it's not because I do. And I even had a friend who mentioned to me, a friend of mine who is white, but grew up in predominantly like Black spaces. And she has grown and as a result has had a lot of Black and biracial friends. And she said to me, something that she saw in me that was different than her typical experience with other biracial women, especially, is that I'm not ashamed of my half white heritage and I embrace that side of myself. And I have a good, close relationship with my white family members. And, they're featured in my content. And I actually spend more time with them than I do with the Black side of my family. And I had never thought of that as something that is different or unique. But once she said it, it really put it into perspective for me. And I do feel like that is one of the reasons that I'm willing to kind of say, like, being a biracial Black person, there are things that when you're a minority within a community, you're a minority within that community. So, the broader Black community is a minority community, but I'm a minority within that community.
Right.
And that's not something that's always talked about, especially because I feel like mixed race people are the only race of people where today it's still acceptable for people who are not mixed race to tell us who we are and how we identify and what our experience is. And it's the only race where it's acceptable. A white person would never be allowed to tell me like, this is who you are. But when a Black person does it, it's seen as okay. And it's not, it's like, I don't want to say it's wrong either way because there's nuances to everything. Yes. But the point is like, it is kind of wrong either way. And so, yeah, that was something that actually gave me pause when I decided to post about my Pinterest experience, because I knew that everyone would assume that the person who put me through that was a white woman. And I knew that it would ruffle some feathers when I admitted that she was actually Black. And I actually also think that that's one of the reasons that Pinterest didn't protect me the way that they should have, because in the eyes of the law, there's no racial argument there, because in the eyes of the law, I'm Black and she's Black. Whereas I do feel like I experienced in some way racial violence because of some of the comments she made about me being biracial, about, I've exposed her enough. So I'm going to give her the courtesy of not like going into full detail here, but there were plenty of indications that something about me being biracial stirred up some negative feelings in her, but that's not something that's recognized. I'm not, Pinterest does not see that as like, oh, Shelby is being harassed in a racial way, so we need to protect her. Like, I didn't have much of an argument other than like, they're doing this to me because they feel threatened, because they feel intimidated. And the thing about that is that's not a protected class. Like, you can't go in front of a court and argue I was harassed because they're jealous, even though I feel like that's what happened to me. It's not something that has any kind of standing in law. And so as a result, that's why I feel like Pinterest was like, well, you're on your own. And I also worried too that I feel like I even told my sister, the lady who did this to me, I said, like, if she were white, she would literally have to go into hiding. Like, because she is Black and she did this, people are angry at her, but it is not nearly the same kind of like energy that they would have if she were a white woman. But for me, I'm like, I'm still, this still happened in part because of my race, just not in a way that American society is advanced enough to acknowledge yet. And so that aspect of it can be really lonely. And so I really appreciate you bringing it up and giving me the space to speak on it. And that's something I really like about TikTok too, is that there's space on that app to have those conversations, because try to talk about this shit on Twitter and see how it goes.
Yeah, and it's starting to look even worse and worse as we carry on with it, because as things will be censored, absolutely, and their direction of where they're going is just, I can't speak more negatively about that app. But anyway, I love that you're actually saying it, because of that nuance and that perspective is not spoken about at all. And that was one of the other things that just sort of lit me up about your content. It was like, wow, this is really courageous, because I absolutely know what kind of pushback you're going to get. But it is a real cause of concern. It is a accepted form of racism. Absolutely. And it should not be tolerated in the same way as if it was delivered from a white woman. Absolutely, 1000%. Totally agree. So there's all these little things, all of these little pieces that have prevented you from flourishing at a place where you really could have taken it to another level. Really, it would have been, if you look at TikTok and you see like, welcome to food TikTok, welcome to this TikTok, you could have brought Pinterest to that other level from the exposure of what it was to be in this company. And we could have had a resurgence of not only youthful users, but also bringing it more ethnically diverse. And what I just keep thinking, wow, what a missed opportunity. What a missed opportunity.
Francesca, you exactly. And honestly, I posted a video, or at least in one of my videos about this, I mentioned that I emailed the CEO of Pinterest, and I did. And in my email, I led with, I'm a content creator on TikTok. I'm part of Gen Z. I didn't say like I'm a woman of color. It's obvious from my little thumbnail. So I know he knew that on his own, but I am the exact demographic that Pinterest is trying to bring to their platform. And also that Pinterest is trying to, not only in terms of users, but also in terms of creators. And I led with that to say, like, what was happening to me was wrong, and it would be wrong for it to happen to anybody. But I'm aware enough of the world that we live in to know, like, I have to, in order to make my case to this man, to the CEO, I have to make it clear why I'm useful and why he should care that this is happening to me. And so I really, I expected that pleading with him in a way, which is what I did, because I just didn't want to be pushed out of Pinterest like that. And I was still, at the height of it, I was still committed to it, because, you see it yourself. And this is exactly where my mind was too. I was like, this working at Pinterest could be good for both me and Pinterest. And so I didn't want it to just be like ripped away from me by hateful people. And so I expected like presenting myself to him and kind of noting these things, that him as a CEO and, in a really competitive landscape right now for his product, in my head, he would care enough to make it so that I could have a different experience there. Because I also, I offered, there were numerous things that I pitched to Pinterest that would make it possible for me to stay there and thrive and just get away from the people who were doing what they did to me. And it's like they just had no interest in it whatsoever. And so I had the same feeling, Francesca, where I was like, wow, it's just bad for business. And also, you all know I'm a content creator and that my niche is storytelling. So I was like, what are you, the more they doubled down on how they were acting, the more I was like, wow, this place is, that's why my Glassdoor review said it's in its death spiral. Because I'm like, even at 25 years old, I know that this is bad for business. This is bad business practice. It just doesn't make sense. And same with, the woman who did it to me being the CEO of her own coaching company.
Oh my goodness. What a joke. When I saw that, when you shared that, I was like, are you flipping kidding me? Like I just couldn't even comprehend that this idiot wanted to have her keep going. Tell me a little bit about.
Yeah, I was thinking that I thought the same thing, especially because I warned her repeatedly about her behavior. Like it wasn't just like they did all these crazy things to me and I just took it and then exploded one day. Like everything they did, I confronted them for. So, and I told her, like, I'm not going to play nice about this. You need to leave me alone. And to this day, I don't understand especially because she's not a private citizen. You may have noticed that with the rest of the mob, I didn't mention them, and it's because they are private citizens, and I'm not going to dox private citizens. But someone like her, who is a CEO, a public figure, that was the craziest part about it to me, because I'm like, you are a leader for a company whose target audience is me, and you are bullying and harassing me, knowing that I have a platform, knowing that my niche is storytelling. Like that, to this day, I still laugh about it because I'm like, what type of CEO? I mean, it's just messed up on so many different levels, but of all the targets in the world, in what universe do I make sense as a target? It was such a mind-bending experience to go through it, because like I said, every point I'm telling them, leave me alone. This is not going to end well. I'm reaching out to everyone I can at Pinterest, like every leader I could think of to email and ask for support. I did. I made a case for myself. I had dozens of pages of documentation, and that, which is another thing that inspired me to share my story. Cause I'm like, I did everything right, everything I possibly could have done. And I ultimately still had to leave because Pinterest just does not value me. Like they did not see me as someone who actually is worthy, because otherwise they would have done a hell of a lot more. Like they could have moved me to a different team, which is something I asked for. They could have moved me to a different manager, which is something that I asked for. And they just did nothing whatsoever at all. And so I just don't see, I genuinely, when I said in its death spiral, I wasn't just trying to be provocative. I genuinely believe that after the experience that I had there, because I'm just like, I'm a very talented individual and I have a lot to bring to this company, and you are just going to sit by and watch me be abused. Like, it's not even like I'm like not being promoted and just kind of coasting. Like I'm actively being harmed and targeted by other members of this company who do very little. And you all are just like, well, it was weird. It was really, like I said before, working there, I had no idea that it could ever be so bad at an organization.
Wow. I mean, it doesn't sound like, I mean, they literally have to like wipe everybody out from their board to from top down and just redo it, rebrand, redo it, the whole deal. I mean, it's just shocking. But I will say this is going to be the beginning of you figuring out, nothing's going to surprise you from this point. From your core harasser is going to actually, say that, oh, what we do, we support people in your position. For me, one of my thing, and this was at Kate Somerville, the person that really pushed up against social media and how stupid it was, and this was in the mid 2000s and the whole thing, and I was creating it. They left the company and started doing their PR social media company because that's the way to move the needle. And I remember going, wow, how many times have you chastised me in front of our boardroom saying that social media doesn't even do anything? And this idiot, and it's the same with you. And I think that that's the other thing. If I could say anything to, your generation, is to, be aware that these little surprises, people that don't believe in you, are actually going to be turning their back quite quickly and saying, not only do I believe in it, but I'm the expert. But they don't know anything. It's the same people that like go to, their frontline team and ask them for help to just post. Like, how does this mechanism work? Those are the same people that are going to say they're experts because of their level of, their executive echelon role, whatever it is. And it's something that will always follow you throughout your entire career. And it doesn't stop. It's just shocking how people that are not on your side, by the way, that is also a validation moment. The reason why they're not on your side is because you are super talented and you threaten their livelihood in their head. But they don't know how to be at a higher level and understand that this gorgeous spark plug is going to infuse the entire company and the movement of what we're trying to create. So they don't know how to tap into it. So they spiral and they're idiots. And then they go off to do their next big thing. It's really sad.
Right. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that because I can relate so much. I had an experience with my Pinterest manager where I won't get into it because we'll be here for like 10 minutes if I tell the full story. But basically, so a lot of her marketing on her website is like ripped off from me from conversations that we had. And it's just so infuriating to look at it and also just freaky. I'm like, she's obsessed with me like that. And I got a lot of comments on my TikTok that were like, this is scary, like the level that she took it to with you. And I'm like, yeah, y'all are telling me, like, giving my phone number out and things of that nature. Like they didn't just come for me. Yeah. It was such an experience. But another thing or a layer that I wanted to comment on that you keep referencing is kind of this generational piece, because I do think, to your point, you kind of drew some parallels between millennials and boomers, and something that I think is interesting is, my mom is Gen X, and that's the thing with Gen Z is we were raised by Gen Xers who were raised by boomers who were kind of like, some shit's got to change. Like there's some things that my mom and dad didn't do quite right. And so Gen X has definitely taken a different approach to parenting. I think that has created the Gen Z person who is just not willing to suffer and not willing to take people's shit, more or less.
Right.
Like my mom definitely was very supportive of me standing up for myself and pushing back and speaking my truth on TikTok she told me, stick to the facts, like don't set yourself up for any kind of defamation or libel issues, but definitely speak your truth. And so it's funny because I'm a cusper, I'm like the oldest Gen Z, youngest millennial, depending on who you're talking to. And I always kind of in my head thought of myself as more of a millennial until I worked at Pinterest with true millennials. And it was interesting because that was like the first environment I've ever been in where the millennials saw me as different. And because my manager would frequently comment on me being Gen Z. And, after I reported her and emailed the CEO, like people on my team found out about that and they were like, man, Gen Z, like they're not playing around. And then that was something that was interesting to me because like I said, I'm a cusper. So depending on who you're talking to, I'm one or the other. Right. But I do think you're right. Like Gen Z is definitely, we're coming in with like just a kind of different kind of attitude and just willing to less risk averse, I think, than previous generations. Like I was willing to take some big risks throughout this because I was like, I don't have any other options, honestly. Like it's either take these risks, suffer, or just kind of quit with, my head down. And I'm definitely not shaming people who take that path, just like quitting and GTFO. It's just me personally, my personality. I knew if I didn't do something for myself, I would feel worse. And so fighting for myself the way that I did and sharing my story on TikTok, it helped tremendously. Like I was extremely depressed and really struggling with what happened to me until I dropped my series. And just the amount of conversation I was able to generate and the level of detail I was able to get into and just the platform I had, like after being ignored and dismissed by Pinterest for months, to have hundreds of thousands of people listen to me and take me seriously and comfort me and share their own stories. It's something that I really appreciate about being a content creator. I'm very grateful for it. I do, I see TikTok and the community there as like my number one support through this situation because I was just received with so much like, we believe you, and this shit is crazy. It was like easier to talk about it on TikTok than it was with some people in real life. Because some people you talk to about in real life can't believe it. They're just like, they don't even, you know, and even when I tell them the level of detail, like, no, these people like gave my phone number out and were spying on me, and I have reason to believe I was being followed around Miami, they still are kind of like, it just doesn't click. Like, it's just so insanely shocking that something like that could happen. And for nothing really, like I didn't do anything but work there, honestly, genuinely. Like I tried so hard to make those people like me, which is something I regret. I wish I had focused more on the work and less on the relationships, because I do think that's one of the reasons it had the impact on me that it did, because I tried so hard to be friendly and cordial with them and win them over. And when they just, you know, ramped up the harassment against me, and then I was able to realize what was even happening, it was really devastating. It was very, like I described earlier, it was very disillusioning.
Wow. That's incredible. Oh, what a story. And I think that if anything, if people are really diving into this and want more, where can they find you?
So I'm on TikTok at Shelby Barlow. That's where my best content is, where I do a lot of talking and sharing about my life. I'm also on Instagram, primarily just pictures of Miami and me doing things in Miami. TikTok is definitely where the better stuff is. So you can also reach out to me at any time via email or LinkedIn. I have a link tree in my TikTok bio that can take you to all my different platforms. So happy to chat and connect at any time.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Shelby, for taking the time. I think your voice is really needed. And it's also a wake-up call for those older generations that think that we should still be on the same path. We definitely need to take a detour for a better path. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. I really appreciate you making the connection and just giving me the space and time to meet you and chat and connect. It's been really fun.